Councilwoman Estime Irvin.
I can hear you.
Thank you very much. And today it's April 7, it's 2 p.m. And we are about to have an emergency meeting in the city of North Miami. And like we all know, since March 13, 2020, the city has declared a state of emergency. And besides that, we have so many executive orders from whether it's the federal government, the state, and the county. Some of them are recommendations, some of them are mandatory, and I think the administration gonna give us an overview on where we at right now. And the last one in date, it's the Safer at Home, where we recommend everyone in the city to stay home, and all the non-essential businesses to be shut down. And we want to please the police department for doing a phenomenal job. And every night between 8 and 10, I'm on the street and the police is on the street and checking out businesses who respect the executive order and those who don't. And this is where we are. And Vice Mayor Desilme won't be able to be with us. And we have quorum, and I'm going to call the city clerk to call to order, please, and do a roll call before we move forward.
Councilwoman Keys,
Here.
Councilman Galvin,
Here.
Councilwoman Estime Irvin,
Present.
Vice Mayor Desilme, Mayor Bieneme.
Yes.
Mayor, you have a quorum to proceed.
Thank you very much. And before we move forward, I don't know if anybody on the council would like to make a statement before we move forward. Then first of all, let's thank everyone who's listening. I won't be able to see how many, but I know we have residents and other people from the city or outside of the city watching or listening. And I hope that you'll be able to make it, because well, time, it's very hard for us, but we're gonna get to it. And like I said, before we move forward, let's hear if anybody on the council would like to make a statement. And let's start with District 1, Councilman Scott Galvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this is an unprecedented emergency in our city's history, in our country's history. And I'm really glad that the council is finally meeting, because we need to continue to be active in implementing relief efforts. You'll hopefully hear me get to discuss about how I hope that we'll use our contingency fund to implement different programs. But North Miami needs to realize that our city is doing a yeoman's job to stay on touch of things, stay on top of things, and to continue to move us forward. And special thanks to our police department, who've worked very, very hard. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. District 2, Councilwoman Keys.
Thank you. Thank you for holding the meeting this afternoon. Just a thank you to our management, our police, our emergency operations. I think the city has done, our staff has done a fabulous job keeping the city operating, even though City Hall itself is not physically open for visitors. We are up and running. Everything is still moving. Our building department, we're still moving, and the police has done a fabulous job. Hope to see some more food and assistance to our population, especially our seniors and disabled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Marie-Estime Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to, first of all, say hello to all of my colleagues. I miss you dearly. I'd like to also say thank you to our city manager and all of the employees in the city of North Miami that are working tremendously hard for the well-being of our residents and our business owners. I'd like to publicly thank the mayor for the initiative for the food distribution, where I thought went really well. You wouldn't believe that the people that are really in need in our city, I'm still getting emails about that. People are so grateful that we have stepped up as a mayor and council to really help them out. So I'm very excited about that. And I just want to give a good shout out to a lot of the residents that are actually taking this serious, that are actually staying at home, that are doing what is necessary to stay safe. And I just want you all to know that we are working really hard for you. We're doing everything that we can. Some of us are even putting ourselves at risk to make sure that you're safer. But and I'm just glad that we have this opportunity to dialogue and to publicly dialogue so that everyone understands what we're doing. So thank you for this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna allow Madam City Clerk to have any statement.
Well, first I have to take my hats off to city administration, emergency management, the police department for their tremendous efforts in light of this pandemic. I think that we are in times that we never thought that we would see, and yet we have learned so much about not only ourselves, but how interconnected the world actually is, and how what takes place in one area really does affect us no matter where we are. So I want to also thank the residents who have stepped forward and given of themselves to really be present and helpful to their neighbors. And I encourage us all to continue embarking on and taking on such efforts. In addition to that, I just want to remind us all that by staying home, we're actually not only saving ourselves, but we're taking care of our families. We are taking care of our community, and we are also being thankful to the frontline workers and the essential staff who is forced to be out every single day to make sure that we're taken care of. So in light of that, I just want to remind you that we are much definitely safer at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think our emergency management are going to be able to speak on safer at home, and so the residents can understand exactly what it is, because we receive so many emails of complaints from residents about safer at home, what that means. And I receive a lot of phone calls from the county and other government entity, and they realize that the city of North Miami is doing what they're supposed to do. And if you can check the street between 8 and 11 p.m., you can understand that over 90% of the residents of the city, they respect that safer at home, and understand that since there is no curfew in the city and there is no curfew throughout the county, and sometimes we see cars on the streets, it's people coming from work, coming from other parts of the city. And I think the chief of police and maybe Branson gonna give us an overview of what it is safer at home. That's been because we have to practice that. That doesn't mean we cannot walk around our streets and with our dogs, with our family, and enjoy the beauty of the weather. And the first thing now is to let our interim city manager, Arthur Soe, to intervene. Mr. Soe.
Yes, thank you all for joining. Thank you to the residents as well as you, the council. Want to just say thank you to the employees. A lot of the directors are on. You don't see them on the camera, but they are on, and thank them for working hard. Just a couple brief things. I'm going to turn over to Brinson to just give you an update on Corona as it relates to North Miami. We are still, as you guys know, still under skeleton crews. We are pretty much down to maybe 1 or 2 people per department coming in a day. The majority of our staff are working from home. Everyone has their laptops. They're able to log in and work from home. So we're not missing anything. No services have been affected, or except for, of course, Parks and Recreation services. But none of our other services have been affected to this date. To touch a little bit on past week, we did have a food distribution, and we fed approximately a little over 500 families for 7 days. The dry goods were enough for 7 days. We still do have we still have food left over that we will be moving forward to. We're moving forward with at a later date to do another distribution. So we are good with that. And I want to really stress the food was given to North Miami residents, everyone who was in zip codes for North Miami residents. I want to stress that. I want to stress that, and which it might have been, I felt bad for turning people away. However, I did utilize the funds, just to let the mayor and council know, the funds utilized were funds that come from our regular programming. Some of the things that we've canceled, we've canceled all of the Easter activities that we had, and we've canceled some of the senior program, and a lot of the programming that we have canceled. I used that money for the food distribution. The money was actually charged to our COVID-19 account, which is a non-departmental that we did create. So when it is time for reimbursement, we can show the federal government, hey, this is where a lot of our money that we spent for the COVID-19, and that helps with reimbursements once you have it in a specific account. So that was done. We are continuing, like I said, the services are moving forward. And we'll get to some of the other stuff later on in the agenda. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Commander Brenton, who's going to give us a brief overview of the situation with COVID-19 as it relates to North Miami.
Before we move forward with Commander Branson, I don't know if anybody on the council, based on what you just said, doesn't have any question, any comments about it. You can raise your hand and you can talk if anybody want to ask the city manager a question about what he just said. And just say something that for the city manager, and what we are doing, we're not using any money was not budgeted.
Exactly.
And we put all the money as an emergency COVID-19. So even though the money was in the budget, we still put the COVID-19 so we can be reimbursed by FEMA at an amount of 75 up to 75%. I think that was the recommendation that I give the city manager, and so far I don't know if that's what you're doing.
Yes, and as we continue to move through this situation, we're monitoring, and we'll speak on the finances toward the end. But we are monitoring all revenues coming in, all expenses going out. Of course, we have our day-to-day bills that we still must pay, and we're still paying all of the employees. That's one important thing to note right now. All of our employees are still getting paid. The part-time employees who work for us that man the parks, the community centers, right now at this moment, those people are still getting paid for whatever hours that they normally work. So I want to make sure that's on record. We're monitoring the revenues coming in. We're monitoring expenditures going out. I've worked closely with the budget department and the finance department, and even Parks and Rec with our events. Right now, I'll say that the majority of the money that we spent right now came from all of April events and all of the May events coming up. But one important thing that I want to say, and my hesitation to actually spend and not, free spending because all of these things are canceled. On the backside of that, we are also canceling rentals. So our rental facilities aren't being rented right now. So we're losing money on that end. We're not renting facilities. Nobody's renting our parks. There are no special event rentals going on citywide. So we are losing money. To go and maybe dive a little further in while we're on the subject. Waste Pro. Waste Pro is still out collecting trash citywide. Well, a lot of the businesses are closed now. So businesses didn't want to pay Waste Pro. So Waste Pro is coming in and picking up containers. So say, I guess, the barbershop who might have a small dumpster or container, they're closed. So Waste Pro comes, picks it up. So later on down the line, yes, we will be affected by these things because now the franchise fees goes lower. So we'll get less money in franchise fees. However, we might increase somewhere communication surtax. Communication taxes. Other things that might increase. Now people are going to be using a lot more water because everybody's home. So things are going to go up and down. One thing is we're only 3 weeks in. These numbers are going to change. I wish I could, pull out the magic wand and give you exactly what it's going to be, but we're monitoring every day and monitoring the cash flow coming in. So as soon as we notice something's going different, that, I could let you guys know. But again, we're 3 weeks in. We haven't seen a drop off. We've drastically increased our online water payments. People weren't paying the bills online. Now everybody's paying the bills online. So that stuff is picking up where we see a decrease of actually foot traffic coming in City Hall. So those are some of the things that are going on. But as the mayor did say, right now I'm trying to utilize all the money that we have budgeted right now. I'm trying not to use any of our reserve monies at this point because another, maybe month from now, whatever, we don't know what's going to happen with this virus and what's going to happen. So I'm trying to be as tight with the money as possible right now. And
thank you very much. And Councilman Galvin raised his hand. Councilman Galvin.
Yeah, I was just going to say something that Mr. Story has already said. It's really important to emphasize that FEMA has already told us that they will reimburse costs and tip of the hat to staff for getting that code set up before they even announce that. Because a lot of the things like during a hurricane when we have to pick up debris, a lot of the things that we spend now will be reimbursable.
Thank you very much. And City Manager, you can introduce Commander Brinson.
So yeah, right now we'll turn it over to Commander Brinson, who is our emergency manager, and he'll give us a brief update of COVID as it relates to North Miami.
Thank you, sir. Commander Angelo Brinson, emergency manager for the city of North Miami. I have 3 brief items to cover. First of all, as the city manager stated, an update on COVID-19 cases, what it means to flatten the curve, and how that affects the safer at home order that the mayor spoke about. And finally, the updated CDC guidance on face coverings. Currently, as of 10 a.m. today, from the Florida Health Department website, there are a total of 14,505 cases of COVID-19 in Florida. Out of that number, there's approximately 1,778 hospitalizations, and unfortunately, we have suffered 283 deaths within the state of Florida. Now, to bring it down to our neck of the woods, Miami-Dade County has a total of 4,950 cases, and out of that total, North Miami has 64 cases of COVID. Now, that, of course, is as far as the reporting that came out this morning at 10 a.m. The overall message, what we are trying to spread to everyone, is that in order to slow the spread of COVID-19, everyone's going to have to do their part, and that's where Safer at Home comes in. If you're not going to work, if you're not going to the grocery store or the doctor's office or the pharmacy, it's important that you stay home. If everyone took the time to follow the rules, to practice intensive hygiene, washing their hands constantly, avoid touching your face, practice social distancing, and wear a face covering of some type when you go inside an establishment, that's going to essentially wipe out the virus. If everyone practices that, the virus can't spread. But we're seeing a spread every day because people are still meeting, they're still congregating, they're still having that contact where the virus is spreading. So we're just going to have to ask all residents of North Miami, if you're not leaving your home for an essential duty, essential task, which is can be described as going to the grocery store to get your medication, or just or if you need food from a grocery store, you should please stay at home. We've heard flatten the curve on the news, and basically what that means is we have an estimate of how many Americans will be affected by COVID-19 if no actions are taken, if no protective actions are taken. So, for example, let's use 100 million. If we do nothing, 100 million people will be infected. But now we decide to close all the schools. So by closing all the schools, we lower that number of infected. Then we close all non-essential businesses. That lowers the curve. Then we close restaurants. We close dining. That lowers the curve. Then we send home all non-essential employees. So you guys get the picture. In order for this to work, all the steps that we're taking to lower the overall number of infected. And that's why safer at home is so important. If everybody follows the rules, we will flatten that curve and we will beat this current pandemic. And finally, before I close, the CDC recently sent out recommendations last week, Friday. And basically they says, if you're leaving your home on some type of essential business and you're going to go into an establishment, like say a grocery store or to pick up some food from a takeout restaurant, you should put some type of cloth covering on your face. Now, they were clear that they weren't talking about medical or surgical masks or N95 respirators, but some type of scarf, t-shirt, towel, or anything to cover your face. If everyone is out in the streets and they cover their face, then that's going to reduce the spread of anyone who might have COVID-19 and not know it. So there's guidance out. I know we've sent out information. I will send out more information from the CDC. It basically has information and a how-to guide on how to take normal household items like old t-shirts, pillowcases, towels, and how to make a mask to protect yourself. But again, they recommend some type of cloth face covering, not a surgical mask. Those items are still in high demand and should be reserved for our medical personnel who are in the hospitals, our first responders who are out still responding. So thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to share this valuable information with the public, and I can answer any questions.
You want to ask any questions?
I'd like to add, Mayor, before we move forward, I've gotten calls from several other municipalities, regarding, how we moving so fast with the stuff that we're doing. And a lot of these other municipalities don't have emergency managers or emergency management department. And I'm telling them where it is, it goes by looking like it's not necessary, but it's one of the best things that we have in place because we're able to move so fast and get things done. We have people dedicated to it that are on top of it before it gets really, really bad. So thank you guys for the support with our emergency management department that we do have and approving it, because in situations like this, you see we're able to get the information quickly and then share information with other people, just like we did in the last hurricane. So thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much. Anyone has a question for Commander Brunson? Yes, sir.
Well,
Councilman Galvin first and Mary second. Yes.
Sure, I'll be very quick. Commander, I got a complaint yesterday that the city is not posting any information or guidance on social distancing or any of this stuff. And obviously, I told that person they need to register for City eBlast because it's all over our social media. But do we have, and this might be a question for IT, do we have a page on our city home site where all of the different recommendations are listed? That in the future, I can just say, oh, well, if you missed any of these, click this link and you can read them all.
Yes, if you go to our city website, along the top of the page, there's a banner in red that says COVID-19. If you click on that banner, it has all the information that we share with the public. In addition to that, we also have links to the World Health Organization, links to the CDC, where we get all of our information from. In addition, obviously, every day we send out email blasts, constant contact emails with various tips about social distancing, rumor control, and just useful information that our residents can utilize.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Estime.
yes, thank you. I'd like to expound on actually what Councilman Galvin just said. I actually had emailed you, Mr. City Manager, on seeing if we could make it easier. I know that we have a big red icon on there that says COVID-19, but I thought it would be more helpful. Like Miami-Dade County has something similar where there's they have a miamidade.gov/COVID coronavirus. So I'm suggesting that we, and this should be very simple for IT, that we have a northmiamifl.gov/COVID-19 or coronavirus, whichever way, so that whenever we're doing a email blast or whatever, people can be directed there. I know it's in front of the website, but I think it would be helpful if there is actually a, I'm not techie, but a URL named for it. I think that would be helpful.
I did get your email on that, and
I have another question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I did get your email on that, and we have our website, I believe, is northmiamifl.gov/coronavirus. We have it already.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I didn't know.
We'll start promoting it more. Like you say, we'll start promoting it more, but we did, that is our website now.
Okay, thank you. Another thing is, Mr. Commander Branson, is there any way that we can get the National Guard, if we were able to find a site here and get the National Guard to come and do testing here in our community? I mean, well, when I say the National Guard, I mean, could that happen?
And let me answer that question. And this one is to the county. We've been having conversation with the mayor, and we understand that the emergency management, but to the mayors, we identify different site. If there is an emergency, yes, we have a location that in case there is a need for that. But understand that the department, we don't have a Department of Health in the city of North Miami. The County Department of Health and the State Department of Health, they're putting a plan in place. If there is a need for that area to have that, then that will be done. That's yes.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, how are we knowing that there's a need? I'm advocating that we do that as soon as possible, because in our community, and I know that you're aware of it, some people are thinking that because there are a certain ethnic group or they're a certain color or whatever, that they're not going to get it. Some people are not testing because the testing is not far. So I'm advocating that we find a testing site, that we try our very best to have a testing site right here in our community. And I'd like to just talk a little bit more in detail about that with you, Mr. City Manager. I have a couple ideas that I'd like to share, and then you can disseminate that to everyone else, or however it is, to make sure that we have testing right here in North Miami.
Madam Councilwoman, I do understand that, but there is some area, it's a matter of national security. And when it comes to national security for the city of North Miami, and the chief and myself, we are the one who get the first-hand information, and there's information that cannot be shared with anybody. That's been, we're working on that, and we're in contact with the federal authority about when it comes to national security and those things that cannot be shared. And that being said, then let me go to the city manager. And
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Oh, if I can, we actually on the call we have Mr. Ron Book, our lobbyist. He also wanted to weigh in, if you don't mind, on this particular topic about testing. I don't know if you want to yield to him to say a few words.
And we're gonna get to him, but we are at item number 3 on the agenda, where we're gonna have the chief of police first. No.
Yes. Okay. So right now
we're gonna get to one book.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know if Councilwoman Carol Keys have a question. I wanna make a comment or about Commander Branson's statements. I think you have.
Yeah, I was on mute. No, I will just wait to the end. I'd like to allow our chief and Mr. Book, who's waiting for us to get that done. Thank you.
Is Mr. Book got to go, and we want to hear from him first, then he can go, or can he wait?
We'll go ahead and let Chief do his presentation, and then we'll go into the section with our 2 lobbyists.
Okay, thank you very much.
At this time, I'll turn it over to the chief, who's going to do a brief PowerPoint regarding the Safer at Home designation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Larry Jariga, the police chief. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. If I could ask IT to put the PowerPoint up, please. All right. Since the state of the emergency was enacted, along with our Safer at Home emergency order, we've been focused on the health and safety of our community and our employees. Our police department has been committed to educating our residents as well as members of the business community to ensure their protection and compliance with the emergency orders. Education has been stressed from day one. We've been on multi-language radio stations and handed out hundreds of flyers in different languages. We've communicated both on the telephone and in person with people from all sections of our city. You may have seen the message boards we've been utilizing along with our social media sites. Our men and women have been out on foot. You've seen them on bicycles, segways, our boat, and even horses in order for us to spread the word and bring attention to the need for us to slow the COVID-19. We educate, and then we educate some more. We've made hundreds of business visits, and we're fortunate to have the Code Compliance Department assisting us, along with the Building Department. City Manager's office has been great, as have our elected officials assisting us to share this information and ensure that the rules are followed. Now on to enforcement. If our education doesn't gain compliance, we move on to warnings. If the warnings are disregarded, we quickly shut down the businesses. The essential businesses that don't heed our warnings are shut down for at least 48 hours until they come into compliance. And others that are non-essential are going to be shut down and have been shut down for the duration of the order. We made sure that the businesses understand we're not out there to punish people. This is a necessary consequence of this health crisis in order for us to ensure their safety as well as all the residents of North Miami's safety. We don't want to make arrests for these violations, and we don't want to criminalize these violations unless it's absolutely necessary and the owner has no regard for the health of our residents. We want and we need, and I need everybody to pay attention to this part, we need participatory compliance. We need everyone to participate in this voluntarily for the safety of everyone involved. As been mentioned by the manager and our elected officials and Commander Brinson, the Safer at Home emergency order strongly urges our residents to stay inside their apartments and their houses. Unless you need to go outside, you need to stay inside. Education, encouragement, persuasion have all been successful thus far. However, we need more residents to be part of this life-saving cause. And if you stay at home, you're helping to stop the spread and you are saving lives. You'll see today we're putting up signs as well as this billboard to keep promoting, you are not stuck at home, folks. You are safer at home. And this is the final slide here. Our men and women proudly continue to serve even with the high risk. Our entire station's been professionally disinfected on multiple occasions, and our personnel are now mandated to wear their masks and gloves every time they enter a structure or conveyance, or when they're directly engaging with a member of the community. We're working regular and overlap shifts in order to respond quickly to specific COVID-19 issues that come up or emergency order violations, and also to provide high visibility. For the convenience and the safety of our community, we're taking police reports over the phone for most calls. And I'm proud that our officers have been out there. I know many of you have seen them, reassuring and being empathetic to our residents who are in need. Our officers, they're fantastic. They're out there making emergency deliveries of food and supplies for those who are isolated, and even spending time on the telephone speaking to residents who are alone. And they simply just call here just to talk to somebody since they're by themselves. We need to continue to support each other as a community, and we're going to get through this together. So I can certainly answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. And the first question is Councilman Gavin.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, why has North Miami not instituted a nighttime curfew like so many other cities around us? What are your thoughts on a curfew?
Well, we have not instituted one, nor has Miami-Dade County overall. My feeling is that our men and women on the midnight shift and late afternoon shift are out there checking the businesses, checking the roadways, and we've certainly seen a major decrease in the number of people on the roadways, whether it's pedestrian traffic and for sure vehicular traffic. A good majority of people are complying with the stay-at-home order. And at this point, I think we're doing a fantastic job keeping people where they need to be. I don't know how long this is going to go, Councilman, and I don't want us to get to the point where people start disregarding things. If we need to ramp things up a little bit with a curfew down the road, maybe we'll move to that. But at this present time, I'm confident with the work our men and women are doing out there by keeping an eye on things and keeping people off the roadways. And there's a difference between this and a hurricane as an emergency, where the hurricane, as you know, we have no power. Roadways are absolutely pitch black. Here, we still have the light out there so our officers can continue to patrol safely through the neighborhoods, through the business corridors in order to keep everybody safe.
Thank you very much, Chief. And any other question from the council?
I have a question.
Yes, Councilwoman Keys.
I've gotten some questions from residents. It's been in the paper today, and we've discussed it at the League of Cities. City of North Miami Dade is not closing down our construction, which I'm okay with. And I had spoken to our management, and code was supposed to be going to make sure that the people who were out here on the construction were practicing the 6-foot distances. Is that something the police or code will be doing just to make sure that our construction workers are practicing this and are not, getting contaminated and bringing it back to us? So we're trying to enforce that along with the businesses.
Yes, we're enforcing all the orders. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of our police department. These are criminal violations based on the order, and code is helping us along with the building department. They're helping us. If they see violations while they're out, they notify us, and our officers are also out checking the different areas.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilwoman Estime Irvin, do you have any questions?
Mayor, can I add something to that before we move to Councilwoman? I spoke with Danny Salas today over at Solomia. And as you guys know, that is a large revenue source that we were anticipating coming in, the building, the permit fees from that. And I was informed that UM has shut down completely. So UM is focusing all of their efforts toward COVID-19. So they stopped building. So they're not moving. So this is one of those, and we're not sure when they're going to start back. I just wanted to bring it up since you mentioned construction. But this is one of those things that we're monitoring. It's a major one. We were anticipating from Solomia about $3 million worth of building revenues this year. So right now they're on pause. So the money still comes in, whether it comes in this fiscal year or not, because they're going to finish the project. But I just want to let you know that is some of the things that are weighing in on some of the decisions being made by administration as we contact and know these big items that come up once they go on pause. The pause button's hit. Is okay, now we need to monitor and see what we need to do moving forward. I just wanted to bring that up, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes. Do you have any question? Yeah.
May
Yes.
I say something?
Yes.
I just heard from our building official, and he has advised us that he is checking, the building department is checking every day at inspection sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Estime.
Yes, as usual, thank you, Chief, for your service, your leadership. Thank you for the food distribution that I think went very well. Thank you for your presence. I'm seeing more of the presence in our community, on my block especially. And I know that the work that you're doing and making sure that non-essential business stay closed and providing support for essential business. So I thank your department. Obviously, I'm biased. I think we have the best police department in Miami-Dade County, but thank you again for your service.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And let me say something about the testing side. I just don't want Councilwoman to think that it's not something that we would like to see, but understand that all the testing side right now the federal government is the one that decided where to put a testing site. That means it's the federal government. After the federal government decided, the state is the one that manage the site. And they ask the counties to execute whatever they want. Okay. When it comes to a city, the only person that can deploy, and the National Guard is the mayor of the city in collaboration with the whoever it is, if there is an emergency for that. But still understand that any resident in the city who have symptoms can still go to the primary physician or to the clinic for testing. That's mean they don't have to go to those federal sites for testing. That's mean you feel like the symptom, you just call your doctor or you go to your clinic for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for clearing this up. The way that you've described all of those steps, I would like for you personally to advocate for that. If it's within your purview to do that, to advocate for us to have a testing site here for the following reasons. The first death that happened right here in our city, right here in my district. Everyone's aware of that. That's number one. You know, and you hear, we share very much the same constituents. You share all of the constituents, that a lot of our people are thinking that, one, that they may not get it. A lot of them are not testing. A lot of them will not go to Hard Rock to test. They're not going to go to Hialeah to test. They're not going to go to all the other sites to test. But if it's right here and we're pushing them and we're educating them to know that if they have 2 out of the 5 symptoms, to go out and get tested, and it's right here in their backyard, they would be more pro to do that. I did a video where I sent to a social media video, and one of our constituents that actually attended our last council meeting confessed to me that he was positive for COVID-19. And so this is, we're getting the numbers. I think the last number that we got today was 64 in North Miami. And I wouldn't be surprised if we had a closer testing site that we would then realize that we have more than that, because and that. But based on the
but what we try to say, understand that, for example, in the city right now, we have so many clinics. All those clinics for senior citizens, all those clinics in North Miami, they're still performing testing for the clients.
And I'm not discouraging anyone from doing it. I'm just asking us to take a proactive step on doing that, because everybody's also overwhelmed. The whole medical system is overwhelmed. So I'm sure that the clinics are doing it, but if we can get, the federal government, like you've mentioned, to step in and come into our community. We are the 6th largest city here in North Miami. I think it would be a great idea. I'm just asking for that.
Thank you very much. And now we're gonna move to Arthur Sore with item number 4, federal and state funding opportunities. And you're gonna introduce one book.
Yeah, before we get to Mr. Book, let me, we'll go with Ron. Yes, we'll go ahead and go with Mr. Book first. But I do have on the line Mr. Clarence Williams, our federal lobbyist. So after Mr. Book finishes, we're going to go into a presentation that Mr. Clarence put together for us. So go ahead, Mr. Book, you're up.
Hi, how are you guys? Everything well?
Yes.
Everybody is safe?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. I want to pick up on a couple of points before I talk about the legislative session. A couple of points that were raised earlier that I just think I might be able to add a little bit to. First of all, on the issue of testing, I was asked by the state to engage in helping to arrange the site at Hard Rock Stadium, which we did. But Councilwoman, I'm where the mayor is in the difficulty of getting one set up, number one. And number two, one of the issues is that a lot of people think they want them in their community because it gives their community a priority in testing, and it does not. And it will be run by somebody other than the municipality. And I just think there are a lot of contributing factors into it. Second part of it, Councilwoman, is that there has been a complete lack of available swabs to do the more prolonged test. They finally got some of these 15-minute tests, but are not necessarily as accurate as the longer several-day test. It has taken me the better part of the last 10 days to get swab kits, which are the specimen gathering material. They had the test kit. They didn't have the swab swab kit to gather the specimens. But I can tell you that it's taken every bit of 10 days and a lot of screaming, yelling, and begging to get just for Broward Health. They were completely out. They had opened up a test site in Pompano at the flea market, and they ended up having to close it. Now, it reopened today, but it's been closed for 10 days. So I think that there are just a lot of reasons to follow the mayor's lead on that piece of it. I would just encourage it. I speak to the director of the Division of Emergency Management without any exaggeration 8 or 9 times a day. You've got an emergency management director, which most communities don't have your size. And I just think there's other issues there. I want to go back to a point that Councilman Galvin raised. And Councilman, I don't know whether you have been led to believe that the city is going to get 100% reimbursement for the costs, but we're either at 75-25 or we're at 90-10. No one has been able to answer my question. When the president designated Florida the national deal, it invokes the Stafford Act. As the emergency management director will tell you, commander will tell you, that usually means a 90-10 funding split. The question is, did it trigger the Stafford Act or did it not? And if it triggered it, do we go back to day one or does it start at the day at which the president did it? And we can't get that answer yet. We're trying to. But please don't think that you're at 100 because it's just not, in my humble opinion, reality of a situation. We did help get some of the balance of Irma expenses reimbursed recently. 50% were reimbursed by March 30th of what all communities in the state had outstanding. The balance are supposed to be paid, Mr. Manager, I believe you know, by May the 1st. We will see if they get the balance of it. They pushed no Michael money out the doors. They pushed the Irma money out the doors because they had been primarily doing the Michael reimbursements. So I just wanted to grab those 2 points at the beginning. Look, it was a long legislative session that went into overtime because of COVID-19. The state passed a $93.2 billion budget, largest budget in the state's history. It's about $1.8 billion more than they appropriated last year. They put a lot of money into COVID. They created a lot of flexibility. But I believe that we will ultimately end up in at least one special session, if not 2. The governor does not yet have the budget on his desk. The governor doesn't have any of the bills on his desk. People think oftentimes that a legislative session ends and the budget automatically is on his desk for the 15-day clock, that all the bills are on his desk on the 15-day clock. But fact is that there's no constitutional provision and no statutory provision for anything to get to him in any particular time other than the budget needs to be in place by July 1. He has made clear he's in no rush to get it. He wants to buy as much time as he can buy to see how deep the crisis is. But here's what we're sure of. Just using food and beverage taxes as an example in Miami-Dade, because I track that, council members, Mr. Manager, primarily because of the homeless trust dollars and cents that come in. And I can tell you last month, which was the month of March, we were off just over 10% in food and beverage tax revenues, and that's just the beginning of the trend. Understand that almost 20% of all sales taxes come from the automobile industry. Think about that. If all the sales taxes comes out of the auto industry, that segment of our economy in Florida is off over 70% right now. So think about not just no car sales, but the service departments. And as you know, they allowed service departments and the dealerships to remain open as essential because people have to still move around. And there are cars that die, so they left those as essentials. But it doesn't change the fact that people aren't buying and people aren't going. We just don't know how deep it's going to be. Does the governor turn around and veto the entire budget, or does he veto just major portions of it? Let me highlight a couple of things for you. So first of all, we had submitted several projects for the city through your local delegation members, Senator Brannan and Representative Joseph and Representative Geller submitted your projects. Food pantry, you ended up with $100,000. Septic to sewer conversions, you ended up with $200,000. Unfortunately, the Victims Assistance Emergency Fund was not funded, and it was primarily not funded because there was confusion as to how this emergency fund would ultimately stand up next to the Victims Crimes Compensation Trust Fund that provides monies for victims of crime in our state. And then lastly, the Police Athletic League, we had it alive until the very end. It got chopped because things got chopped when COVID started to get funded. When they started taking the $300 million that they wanted to put aside for that and make sure that they weren't spending their reserves down. A lot of people always ask about the Sadowski Act Trust Fund and whether or not the state was going to sweep it again. It's the first time in many, many years that the state didn't sweep that trust fund. I think the other part of what I think was significant this session was what the legislature did on teacher pay raises. I think that a lot of people thought that before we were done, that the pay raise issue would get gutted. It certainly did not. That average starting salary does get up to the $47,000. The total FEFP, the Florida Educational Funding Program, the acronym, FEFP, was up $776 million year over year, almost a little over a 3.5% increase from last year. Increase in total funds per student was $184 in the FEFP, where you went from $7,656 last year to $7,840 per student this year. And I will remind you, it was only 2 years ago that I came before the council, and I had to admit that the legislature only gave a 50 cent per student increase. So the last 2 years have been significant enhancements in pre-K to 12. The base student allocation went up $40, and the FEFP-based funds had an increase of $340 million. The biggest winner in this year's budget was pre-K to 12. The environment continued to be a big winner with $690 million in total for water quality restoration, which included about $322 million for Everglades restoration alone. The teacher pay raise, by the way, was $500 million as a piece of it. I think that Governor has done a number of things in the past 5 or 6 days that everybody needs to be aware of. So first of all, on the PPP piece of what the CARES Act did from Washington with the pay protection program, which is intended to help protect employees by giving money to small businesses throughout our country. You should be aware that the stamp, the recording fee has been wiped out by the governor from now until the end of 2020. So that recording fee will not be required. People should be aware that the governor has announced this massive transportation infrastructure acceleration plan. And what I think they will ultimately do is sweep into current day funding massive amounts of what's left in the Transportation Trust Fund. I believe that they will get an agreement with the federal funders as well on transportation, so that as soon as we're done with this, and I heard the commander talk about the duration briefly, our information indicates, and the mayor gets into, the mayor briefings as well, but I believe that we're going to have this with us until probably mid-June or later. And most of the folks that are these so-called experts believe that by mid to late September, we will have a recurrence of it. And I think that we should not, when we come out of it, think that there's going to be some panacea. But if what occurs over the next 45 days is the Department of Transportation letting engineering contracts and construction contracts and building bridges and tunnels and things like that, we will have an opportunity to put Florida back to work much quicker. And I'm encouraged by the briefings we participate in every day. We start about 7 these days on phone calls. We do not stop until 6 or 7 at night. There's just one right after another. I promised the manager I would make myself available for the duration of the meeting to make sure that things that we have a lot of knowledge of, we could share with you. I would remind each of you to remind your constituents that when we get into mid to late July, they need to begin to focus on the back to school sales tax holiday. It is August 7th, August 9th. There's only 3 days this year. And the disaster preparedness sales tax holiday, which commences on May 29th and runs through June 4th, which again, depending on the virus, that could alter. The governor's executive powers would allow him the ability to move those days unilaterally. I'm going to stop at that. There's a lot to share, but I think I'll stop, Mayor, Mr. Manager, to give everyone an opportunity for any questions they may have. And if we don't know the answers, we'll get them for you quickly.
Thank you very much. Anybody on the council have any question?
None here.
Carol?
You're muted.
Carol, you have unmute we couldn't hear you.
High tech. Ron, I just wanted to thank you for coming to join us on our meeting. Very important information. And I know you're watching out for us. Thanks.
It's a really bad time. I don't think that any of us going through American history or economics 101, 201, and 301 ever thought that we could see what our parents and our grandparents saw back in the mid-40s. It's just horrific.
Thank you. Councilwoman Estimé.
Well, thank you, Mr. Book, for your update, but I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one before we let you go, a question from the $2.2 trillion stimulus package.
Yep.
And is there any direct money to municipalities?
There is a load of money coming to local governments. There was none earmarked for A, B, and C, but there are a load of local dollars that were dumped into the bill. There were not, Mayor, if you went back and looked 2 or 3 days before they ultimately passed the bill, they were really shortchanging cities and counties. Do I think they put enough in? The answer is no, but I think Congress will do, again, what they're going to do Thursday of this week. They realized between Friday and this morning
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Mayor,
I will get you a report, Mayor.
yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go on.
Can we have Clarence come on, and because he's going to talk about a lot of that federal stuff.
No, but one Councilwoman had a question for Mr. Book.
And maybe Clarence will answer that as well. But Mr. Book, so I heard you encouraging a lot of the businesses, if they have under 500 employees, to file for the PPP. Now, my question is this: like in our communities, a lot of those small businesses may not have a credit, may not have the collateral. How friendly is it? Can they still apply? Will this apply to them as well?
The answer is yes. And by the way, Councilwoman, it applies as what my chief of the federal relief package, Ms. Millette, just reminded me, because she's watching as well. The Payment Protection Act applies to not-for-profits as well. So if you've got 501c3s, and I'll use the Haitian American organization that exists in the city, every one of those organizations can apply for one of those. It's a forgiveness loan.
Right, but I understand that they can apply. What I'm saying is I just want to make sure that if we're encouraging them to apply, that they're not coming up with hiccups. For example, if they have a low credit rate, SBAs are usually rated on the credit rates, on collateral. Will they still have an opportunity to participate or not? That's what I'm asking.
They're supposed to be, and I'll defer to Clarence, who's coming up behind us. But what I understand is, yes, they're supposed to be able to do it. Now, my bank, when I submitted it, wanted some information from me that went beyond the four corners of the actual application. I questioned my bank over it. I supplied them with the information nonetheless. But it went beyond what I understood was intended by Congress and the SBA in the application process they put out. Look, if as time goes on, Councilwoman, and to everybody on the council, Mayor, if your constituents have questions, we'll work to get them the answers. Shoot us emails. We'll work to get you answers the same day, next day. I mean, our goal is to be more responsive to you all than we've ever been, because we've never had a historic crisis like this ever.
Thank you very much. And another thing, in some conference call that I have with, whether it's at the National League of Cities or whether it's the White House or the state, You have nothing to lose. Apply for the loan and let the federal government decide that you qualify or you're not qualified. And if the money is available, after they get to the first tier of people, they're gonna go to the second if the money is available, to the third or the fourth tier. That's mean you have nothing to lose. Apply for it and let the guideline decide it. No, you're not gonna get the money, or you're gonna get the money. Let's see, for example, they have $500 million and only 10% of the people are qualified. They gotta find a way to qualify more people. That means it's better to apply and instead of saying, I don't think I'm gonna qualify, and decide that you're not gonna apply and shut down your business. When you are gonna say something.
I want to add that the Paycheck Protection Program, the Triple P, is to protect their paychecks. And what else does that mean? It means there's no personal guarantee. So the business applies, the not-for-profit applies. It's intended to be a forgiveness loan as long as you meet the criteria. And oh yes, by the way, you didn't sign personally. They can't come back at you.
Thank you very much. Another question, and I discussed that with the city clerk today to see what can we do to help those people. It's file for unemployment, for an example. Can we do retroactive, like, since last week, people have been trying to file for unemployment and they missed 1 week. And because of those technical aspect on the website, now they lose 1 week. Do you think the governor, or can we advocate and on behalf of the citizen to the governor to do retroactive for those unemployment and checks and applications?
Mayor, my understanding was it was to go back and capture those first days of their unemployment. If they have individual problems, they write you an email, they call you on the phone, Mayor, council members, send us that. If they're having problems with DEO, we are happy to intervene on their behalf. And I will tell you that I know that the lawmakers are fielding those questions every day in their legislative offices. Even though they're distance working, they're answering those questions. We have somebody at DEO, a former staffer from out of the Dade delegation that we talk to regularly. Ms. Millette speaks to him on a daily basis. We are happy to get you those answers. And if there's difficulties that they're having, please bring it to us. We know that computer crashed. That's what we know.
Before we move forward, I'm going to let the city clerk, because she's been dealing with a lot of residents from the city calling her about those unemployment application. Madam Clerk, where are you? You have a question for?
I'm here, Mayor. Thank you so much. Mr. Book, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A lot of the issues that I'm seeing is the fact that folks, for one, aren't able to complete the application, of course, online. Now that we have a paper form, the most cost-effective way would be to submit it by fax. Is that something that the department would be able to open up to folks? And that way the city clerk's office would be able to do that on their behalf.
I am happy to ask that question. I don't know why they wouldn't be, other than the fact that fax machines get backed up. And the last thing you want is somebody submitting, thinking they've got it submitted and it somehow got backed up into a fax machine. That said, I don't know the answer. We will get you that answer.
The other question that I have is for folks who were somehow able to make it through the system at the point where it was working for them, and now they're trying to track whether their application went through, and they have less than 1 or 2 days to be able to qualify. So for those folks, would it still be retroactive for them at the point that the application is accepted?
We will double check the retroactive issue. As the mayor had originally asked it, and we will make sure that we get you that answer back quickly.
And in addition to the fax number, of course it goes without saying, but if it could be sent by email as well, I think that would be extremely helpful for individuals who are applying locally. as opposed to having to pay the cost of the stamp and the envelope, or having to even go into the post office.
All right, I got it. They can what I'm being told is they can submit at FedEx office doors and via your local workforce center as well. So your local career source offices will take them, and you can submit at FedEx office stores.
Okay, without having to pay for the cost of shipping at FedEx.
That is my understanding. FedEx and UPS have stepped up to the plate big time all across the country, and so that is what we're told.
Can we put multiple application in one envelope?
I don't know why you can't, Mayor, but I'll get that question answered too.
Okay. You have it? Are you done,
Yeah.
Madam Clerk? Yeah.
That's all I have for now. Those were the questions that I had. Councilwoman Keith had a question.
Thank you.
Question to, through the mayor, clerk.
Yes.
Say that again?
Question,
I can hear you.
since we now have paper applications for unemployment, is there a safe place that people could pick up the application?
Carol, I lost the last 3 or 4
Is there a
words.
place where we can, now that there are paper applications, is there a place in the city where, is there a place in the city, whether it's the library or outside City Hall, where people could actually pick up the paper forms to fill out?
And
So,
we
We do that at the clerk's office or the front of the city.
were
clerk's
discussing
office
that
has-
with the clerk. Yes, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
the clerk's office has actually started helping folks complete their applications, or at least provide the paper applications. But I think that I know that we're in communications with the library as well to set that up, and the city manager will get more information.
We're actually looking into having those forms available and outside. We'll put it outside every day, and the forms just sit outside of City Hall every day. We're looking at that now, just getting the proper apparatus for the forms to sit in. Sit outside. We're looking at that right now.
Thank you. And the other
Let me
question.
add-
Thank you.
Yes.
Let me add,
Councilwoman-
so
Yeah.
FedEx is providing free printing and mailing of the applications. And Carol, there would be, Councilwoman, there would be no reason why you couldn't produce the applications and have them sitting at the City Hall for people to pick up. Nothing stops them. These aren't like absentee ballots. They can pick up an application. I will get the answer to the question of, that the mayor's asked about multiple applications being submitted together, because quite candidly, you could take and box them up and ship them up out of the city, or they could all be taken to FedEx and dropped there, since they're providing that as a service.
Councilwoman Estimate.
Thank you. I'm changing the conversation for a minute. Mr. Book, you mentioned about funding for septic to sewer, correct?
Yes, ma'am?
Will we see any of those funds in the city? Do you know?
Well, Councilwoman, that's the $200,000 appropriation item that Senator Brannan and Representative Joseph sponsored for you is in the budget. You are supposed to get that.
Okay.
We are going to go into a special session where they're going to allocate federal dollars, and they could potentially cut some of the dollars that they've already put in the budget. But because that's infrastructure and because we're ready to go, I would hope we would be able to make the argument that that is consistent with their infrastructure, put people back to work plan. So I would hope that that would be the case. But yes, on septic to sewer, and septic to sewer is going to continue to be a priority of the legislature into next year. We're going to, Mayor, we're going to send to the manager this afternoon shortly. He will have a memo from us that we have gotten prepared that gives you all of the loads of answers on personal relief that we're aware of that have come down from the feds and the state, from IRS checks to auto payments to utilities. All of that is contained in this memo. We're going to get it to you. You can distribute it however you want. You throw it in the garbage if you want. There's a lot of valuable information for your constituents and for yourselves.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Book, I have one more question. Are these applications available to folks who have varying disabilities? For example, those with visual impairments?
You're referring to the unemployment comp stuff?
The unemployment application.
Yeah, if they were employed and they're out of work, yes, we don't discriminate against individuals with disabilities.
More so the question being whether, do you know if the site provides access for those folks who are unable to access, like to read it? So is there maybe a TTY or?
I don't know that answer. We'll get that answer.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
thank you very much. If we don't have any more questions for Mr. Wonbrook, we're gonna let him go. And now we're gonna call on the federal lobbyist.
we'll be here on the phone, but we're going to mute it, obviously.
Thank you very much, sir. And
yes, at this time I'm gonna introduce Mr. Clarence Williams on the call, and have him go ahead, and we're gonna pull up a presentation at this time for Mr. Clarence Williams to move through. You there, Clarence?
Presentation on what it is exactly. Most likely what
the federal funds.
Municipalities in that $2.2 billion and $1 trillion and stimulus package.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Clarence, you there?
Oh, okay.
Is he there? Yeah. Clarence? Okay, we don't have Clarence. Maybe he had to get off.
Voice. It seems like we have the picture, no voice.
Yeah. Okay, so let me move on, and I'll go forward with the presentation. I'm still going forward with the presentation. Okay.
Is it there? It seems.
Yes, Vanessa's bringing it back up now.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, it should be okay. Mr. Clarence, Mr. Williams,
What's going on?
I think
no, it's okay. And
you just need to pull up the presentation. I'm going to do it.
no, but Ricardo moved the PowerPoint, so I don't see it.
Ricardo, we're looking for the PowerPoint. Okay, here we go.
Right here. So I'll probably just.
Don't close it. Okay.
we have the PowerPoint and we just.
Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so this was the CARES Act, the $2 trillion stimulus package, and what my conversations with Mr. Williams, they're likely, as Mr. Book did make reference to, they're going to be another 2 stimulus packages put together to move forward with. We anticipate more guidelines on how the money is going to come down and actually what it's going to be used for, and moving forward. To the next slide. So, as Mr. Book said, $150 billion for states and everything, which everybody said is not enough. But they're going to break this money down, and we'll get a share of it. Most importantly, there's going to be $850 million for Department of Justice JAG grants. And we're slated to receive with the current, the way the money is broken down, the current allocation, we should be receiving about $110,000 of additional monies to the JAG grant. When it comes to the CDBG grant, we should be receiving an additional 452 million if the numbers are correct on how this is going to break down as we move forward, and also another almost $300,000 for our home program. So these, especially the CDBG and the home, are something that we've been putting a lot of money towards ourselves through the last budget process. We put a lot of money together for general fund to make sure that we are, and through CRA to address, the housing issues in our city with affordable housing and workforce housing. So those last two are definitely, I'm going to go toward the initiatives we already have in place. Again, this is the Federal Emergency Management Grant Funding, $45.4 million. And the main one that we're looking at here, the first two, which talk about things that are reimbursable, personal protective equipment, coordination of logistics, safety measures, and community service. I'll tell you right now, when you talk about logistics, that's how we're meeting right now also. We've had to spend money to get this up and running for us. So this is in our fund that I was telling you about, how we had to spend money, and we did it out of a certain fund to make sure we could get reimbursed. So that would be the coordination of logistics. Also, $400 million for emergency managers and the providers of emergency food and shelter. So at this point, we did use the money to buy the food for our last distribution, and we will have that and have it ready to look for us to be reimbursed for that. The one thing we haven't gotten, and I know I'll work with Mr. Williams, moving forward to see exactly, is it a free-for-all, we could buy food every day and get reimbursed for it? I don't have that answer yet. So we've reached out, and I'm sure we'll speak on this a little later. We did reach out. There was an article in the Herald about free services moving forward. So we reached out to Feed in South Florida, who we partner with for our food pantry, and we've talked to them about trying to do some weekly food distributions that we don't have to pay for. But all of that goes under what's reimbursable for federal emergency management grants. I'll definitely check to see how it works and look for more information on us purchasing. Yes, sir.
On that stuff, when we're done with the call today, you and I should probably chat because the Mayor of Miami-Dade has already requested, and it's been approved for them to get 500,000 boxed meals as we get down the road. The Department of Agriculture is gearing up. There's a ton of feeding money in the CARES package, and then the governor's gearing up to do the same thing. So there'll be a bunch of that, and the commander may be able to submit a request to DEM where they'll cover the cost, probably 100%, not 75-25. But you and I can have that conversation when we're done.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next one is about elementary and secondary education. And then the last one, important to us, also economic development, to help the industry, our industry, and it goes into talking about the loans and small business loans. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thanks. For IT, Clarence Williams is commenting in the chat box that he's on the call and unsure why nobody can hear him. So you might want to check in on that. One quick question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. IT just unmuted me. That was a great presentation right there. So sorry. So first of all, let me say hello to everyone. I hope everyone's doing well considering what we're all going through here. We're doing the same up here. I've been locked in my basement now for roughly 3 weeks in Washington, D.C., and everything in between is a ghost town. One of the since he's gone through the presentation, and I don't want to keep everyone forever, I do want to hit a couple of things. The first thing of the direct payments that will be available to local governments, what we have is a Department of the Treasury that is doing a job that they don't do. They receive money, they push stuff back out, after tax day, but they receive money. And what we're finding is that all of these programs that have been set out for them to release funds are trapped in the fact that this is not their day job. This is not what they do. Specifically, and most problematically, is the $150 billion fund that was set up for stabilization for state and local governments is tied up in a policy process trying to figure out exactly what the CARES Act intended and what is going to regulate how that money is sent down. The questions that are sitting before them now can mean millions of dollars one way or the other to cities and counties, and certainly billions of dollars to states. And they're still trying to figure that out. They are on a clock, though. They have to have this done and money sent down by the end of this month. Actually, it's 30 days, so closer to the 26th, 27th of this month. And so once they figure that out and determine a couple of things. One, how much each state will get. Right now, it is thought that the state of Florida is going to receive about $8.3 billion. 45% of that will be slated for local governments. The other 55 will be slated for the states to use however they need to use it, whether that's to, I won't say plug holes, because they cannot use it to supplant other funds. They can use it for a cost associated with COVID-19. It's really, really broad. There are a number of things they can do, but to Ron's point, what the governor is waiting to do is to assess exactly how much money he's going to get and what he can do with it to ensure that the money that was budgeted by the legislature can be spent for those purposes. Right now, we think that is going to be the case. We're just not exactly sure then how local governments smaller than 500,000 are going to get funded. In the state of Florida, we've got 13 localities that are 500,000 or larger. They will be direct funded as well. They're still not sure exactly what that allocation is going to look like for them, whether it's going to be some proration of the 500,000, or excuse me, the 45% that they get, or some part of that based on how much the governor sends down to the smaller cities and counties. So we hope to have this information within days, because they've really got to get moving on it, and it means a lot to how folks are going to work. Specifically thinking back to opening up this call when Councilman Galvin made the comment about contingency funds, I would say, give it a week or so to have an idea what's going to be coming down to you before going into your reserves for these things. There will be a number of funds that will start releasing over the coming days. For instance, some of the things that were mentioned recently, your Burn JAG funds, your CDBG funds, your homeless assistance grants, those will be coming down in waves. The first allotment of funds that you will receive from CDBG, which is a little over $450,000, that's being sent out immediately. That will be followed by more funds later on. They're sending it out in, I think, at least 2, if not 3 tranches over the next 45 days or so. Same thing with the homeless assistance grants. Your first allocation of those funds is a little under $300,000, and then there will be a second and potentially a third tranche of funds that come from that. I do want to jump to a couple of other things that are particularly important, I think. We talked briefly, Ron did, about what things are going to look like 3 or 4 days from now. So at the beginning of the presentation that I put together for ART, I discussed that this is the third of 3 phases. There will be a 4th, and now it looks very likely that there will be a 5th. The 4th bill that was scheduled to be done was initially going to be a stimulus bill. It was not going to necessarily be COVID-19 related. It was going to be heavy infrastructure and, quite honestly, a smorgasbord of other things to kind of get the economy back and running again. Over the last 24 to 48 hours, the decision has been made that basically this fourth phase is now going to be a CARES Act 2 bill to handle some of the things and shortcomings of the CARES Act bill that we passed about 10 days or so ago. There was some optimism that they'd be able to start pivoting away from it, but as this thing kind of drones on and we have to understand, you know, what the horizon's going to look like, it has become necessary to do some of these things. So, you know, as Ron mentioned, one of the things that they're looking at is adding funding to the Paycheck Protection Program as well as to the EIDL program. That will become necessary because so many are jumping in. I would echo to anyone that's listening of the community, do take advantage of those programs. They do two different things. There are slight differences. The Paycheck Protection Program is about employees. They're trying to keep people on payroll. They're trying to help get you from where you are now to the other side of this thing in your capital flow and operations. That's what that one is for. You can get up to $10 million in that program. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program is another SBA program. It is a smaller total amount that you can get, up to $2 million, but that is the program in which if you apply, you can get a $10,000 grant in as few as 3 days. And it's a grant. It's not a loan that gets paid back. Both of these programs are forgivable based on how you maintain your payroll. If you have to let a couple of people go, it'll graduate down what's forgivable versus what you have to pay back. But let me make one thing clear to answer a question that Councilwoman Esme Irvin asked. Both of these programs are modifications of SBA programs that have been around forever and a day. The burn rate on approvals for both of these programs, disapprovals can sometimes sit around 80%. It is arduous. It is a pain in the butt. They will be looking into stuff that you've been doing, for the last 20 years, both personally and with your business. The vast majority of the things that tend to be obstacles for small businesses seeking loans in these programs has been waived. There is no personal guarantee. There is no collateral that is necessary. They will pay minimal attention to what your credit worthiness is going into this thing. They will not ask you to seek credit elsewhere before you can come to them to do that. So as has been said a couple of times, there is absolutely no harm in going after one of these loans to the extent that it can help your business get from here to the other side of this thing, wherever that is. Directly to Ron, they should not have asked him for the information they asked him. The bill was pretty clear, and the regulatory structure around it was pretty clear about what they intended to happen when you go to your bank. So if, folks listening on this call, if you do go to your bank and they start asking you for documents that you didn't see in the initial application, which has its own set of instructions to it, do reach out to us and we'll get you the right help to make sure that you're not being, taken advantage of or otherwise done wrong. They are going to add a significant amount of money to both of these programs. I definitely recommend that folks reach out to try to get one of these. I'll also mention that the industries that you have within the city of North Miami, there are opportunities through EDA to seek grants to help some of these industries that otherwise might be in trouble. Being in Florida from tip to stern, we are a tourism industry, and so there's going to be a lot of struggle in those areas. There are going to be issues with hospitality and those kinds of things. To the extent that you can help prop up those industries, the EDA has about $1.5 billion at their disposal to help with these issues. They have not yet issued their regulatory structure for how they're going to set up these grants. But as soon as we have information on that, I'll be sending that to Art. Art and I have been in communications via email about once every 2 or 3 days and continue to do so. I will also mention that this phase 4 bill that is coming up, they're looking at doing several things in particular. Additional direct payments to individuals. As you probably know, the plan is to start sending out some of those funds this week. For the vast majority of folks, next week for the remainder. It is assessed at this point that it'll probably be about April 14th when people start seeing their funds in their accounts. There are several things that I'll mention right now that are very important for the folks that are listening from the community. The IRS will not contact you to ask you any questions about bank accounts, to ask you any questions about your tax filings, to ask for social security numbers. They will not contact you. If somebody does contact you, let authorities know that person is a fraudster. All right? They're going to use your filings from either 2019 or 2018 to determine what you will receive. If they don't have those, they will use your social security information to find that. And if, sorry? Okay. So don't respond to anybody. If someone calls you up asking for any information whatsoever, just hang up your phone and go on about your business. But those will be coming out over the next couple of weeks, and it appears that they're going to try to put much more money into that program. Prior to the CARES Act passing, in the House bill, the intent was to do roughly this $1,200 piece, do it a month for several months. I don't know if that is what the Senate intends when they come back with their piece, but I do know that they're going to address this in some way, shape, or form. They will be looking at extended unemployment insurance and more resources for food stamps as well. What that looks like at this point, we're not sure. The extra $600 that they have allocated for per week for unemployment claims is still there. Whether they're going to up that or just extend the number of weeks that you can apply for unemployment, we're still not sure yet, but we should have some idea in the short run. There'll be more funds for impacted industries, other than that $1.5 billion and several other funds that are sitting there now. But restaurants, hospitality, transportation, we think it's going to be in that realm. And let me add one thing beside that. For companies larger than 500, but smaller than 10,000, there are still opportunities for those groups to get funds in the loan category. There is a $500 billion fund that was set up for providing liquidity. Everybody thinks of it only as the fund that was for aviation and for some larger scale companies, but that only takes up roughly, what is that, about $46 billion of it. The remaining $450 billion of this fund are for a couple of things. One, to provide loans to those mid-cap firms and industries, and two, and importantly to local governments, is to provide some liquidity in the municipal bond market. As everybody's probably seen, when this thing started up, bonds tanked. Everybody decided they needed to have cash, so they started buying treasuries and selling off their bonds. This $450 billion pot is to provide some backstop and liquidity to the bond market. So anything that the city is working on in that area should be covered by that. There's still a lot of
since we don't have that much time, I don't know if any council members have question for Williams before we taking any more questions. Let's take the question, because some aspect of the businesses, but most likely for the government. Let's hear from Scott. Scott, do you have a question?
Thanks. Yes, this question is more for Mr. Sori or Mr. Kazo if he's still on the call. Mr. Williams brings up the point that we should not take any action with our contingency money for another week at least. When are you planning that we will meet again? Will we be meeting again on our regular council date of April 14th and or April 28th?
Yes, we are going to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Glad to hear, because I'm totally on board. What we've heard today has been really good information. But information is one thing, action is another. I think we should meet as soon as possible next Tuesday to take action on a variety of things.
Okay. And
well,
Council,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
This is Jeff Kazo speaking.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
To answer your question, Councilman Galvin, I understand. We've been talking about that, and I'm glad you asked the question.
Mr. City Attorney.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can we finish with Mr. Williams so he can leave?
That's fine. I was answering Councilman Galvin's question. That's fine.
No, the question is okay. We understand that. Let's finish with Mr. Williams. Then
that's fine.
If you want to leave, you can go. Then we're going to talk about council meeting or the other thing. Councilwoman Keys, do you have any question for Mr. Williams before we move forward? No? And
no, we have all the it's a moving target, these SBA loans. That's federal. I had put out a list. We've got lists. I just keep checking on those lists. And I think our next thing is to help our residents get their unemployment benefits applied for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do you have any question?
No, Mayor. I'm just going to ask that the city attorney please turn on his webcam when speaking.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Clans, do you have anything else to say before we move you?
Sure. Just there will be a lot of cash coming down, whether it's through subgranting through the state or direct funds. And like I said, we've been passing on this information, so you guys will always have it. Do not hesitate to reach out with any questions whatsoever. Just, Art has my phone, he has my text. You guys are available to reach out to me whenever you need to.
Thank you very much, sir. And now we're gonna move forward. And Mr. City Manager, the residents listening to us or watching us, will they be able to ask some question, or do you have a list of questions?
We did advertise for people to send in questions, comments ahead of time, because we normally, when we're on the dais, we don't answer questions on the dais, but we did get some emails in of questions and comments that people did have that the clerk will read into the record once we get done through the agenda.
Next time, can at least they're listening to us and they can ask the question via phone?
Yes, we will. And
we're talking about live, not just asking questions.
With voting items, people will be able to have public comment. We have the ability to have public comment like it's mandatory. We will have the ability to have public comment when we do have voting items for the next meeting.
That's when you're telling me next time, if we have in a virtual council meeting, residents will be able to ask questions on each item.
They will be able to do their public comment as they normally are for our council meetings.
Okay, and thank you very much. And the only thing I would like to add in regards to federal fund, and besides those money that you elaborate on the first or second screen, there's a right now the city of North Miami, I think, is qualified for a $3.8 million and loan at a low interest rate from the housing urban development, and we received a letter that's an advance loan from HUD for $3.8 million to build housing, affordable housing, and to address housing in the city of North Miami. And now we're gonna move, if we don't have any questions, and we're gonna move with Miguel, Augustine.
Let me start. And I asked Miguel to put together just our financial position so everybody would know where we are financially right now. We did, and it's literally that's all he did. It's not a financial presentation. It's just giving us an update of where we are financially as we go through this COVID-19 to assure you guys that we still do have money. We're able to make payroll and everything. So that's what's happening. He's going to give you this brief update now. I'll add before we do, before he does it, the presentation, we've been evaluating, and I think I may have spoke about it at the beginning of the meeting, I'm not sure, but we've been evaluating all of the revenues and expenditures. We've gone back and looked at during the recession years, what the revenues did, how they dropped, what was the percentage of the drop. So we are doing all of that stuff. Right now, it looks like our revenues dropped about 14% during the recession time. So my goal is to use that 14% benchmark to go and start identifying, what that number actually means to us and what are some of the possibilities or steps that we could put into place to mitigate that percent drop. I don't want to wait till the last minute to start working on it. Of course, there won't be any action taken for this immediately. I will have discussions and briefings with you as we move forward and get the numbers. But just to let you know, we are working on it. I just thought it would be important for Miguel to share the financial position with everyone because I know people that's one of the first things. Okay, can we keep paying people? What should we do? Where's the money? So Miguel will do that briefly. So I'll turn it over to Miguel. Go ahead.
Understand we're gonna finish at 4. We're gonna let Miguel have 5 minutes for his presentation, and any question you can ask that after. And after that, we're gonna let the city attorney spoke on the subject he was gonna talk about it before Mr. Williams left. Miguel.
5 minutes.
Miguel, go ahead.
Yeah, me too. Hold on, Miguel.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so really quick, as a student manager, I'm going to just give you a quick synopsis of where we are in terms of cash flow. So next slide. Okay, so as of March 31st, this is when I recorded the balances. The operating bank account, and this is not counting any of the other bank accounts like the deposits or any of the credit card merchant accounts, just strictly the operating account. We had 33,900,000 in the account. That's greatly aided by the funds that we collected during March, the 10 million from Leader Partner sale, the local contract buyout, the 666,000, as well as the 2.9 million that we got from FEMA. We collected quite a bit of those funds in March. In terms of our collections from utility bills, people have continued to pay their utility bills, which is a good thing. Even though we are not doing cutoffs at the time, just to maintain the ability for people to practice good sanitary practices, we still encourage people to make payments on their utility bills so that they don't fall too far behind once this is gone. In terms of the traffic, the foot traffic, as the manager said, the foot traffic through the cashiers has dropped at City Hall and at the Customer Service Center, but the payments online have increased quite nicely. So that has helped to bolster a lot of the collections that we've made. Next slide. So just really quickly, as I mentioned before, we had approximately 270 accounts which were delinquent that were slated to be tagged for turn-offs, not all at the same time, because we do it by cycle, but we've suspended that turn off order. So we just basically allowed people to continue to have water in this time because we need to have them practice sanitary practices. Also, the funds that we collect from the state agencies has been consistent. But we also have to remember that those monies come in usually a month or two behind. So the monies that we collected in March were from the months of December, January. So those were not affected as much by any of the effects of the pandemic. So we expect those numbers, the effects of the lower numbers, to be in a couple of months. Like maybe we'll start to drop off in those. We're not sure what it will be like. We continue to make payroll costs. So all employees have been paid, and customer and vendors have also been paid on a consistent basis as well. So like the manager said, we're doing what we can to maintain the cash that we do have, and I'd like to thank my staff for the work we do as well in this time. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Miguel. And Mr. City Manager, we still haven't collected the $5 million for CAGNY yet from the county. Where are we at with that, please?
No, sir, we haven't collected it. We had met with the county maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks before all of this stuff happened. And they were drafting everything, the attorneys were drafting everything to go to the Board of Commission. So I'm nearly certain that got put on hold, like a lot of our stuff has gotten put on hold right now. We will continue to reach back out to them to see when, I know they had their first meeting today also, so to see where they're at with their meeting and moving forward on some of these items.
But do we have anything? Yes, go ahead, Councilman Galvin.
Sure, I'll be quick. For administration, this question. One of the things I'd like us to examine as relief for our residents, hopefully for even a vote at our next council meeting, is some utility bill relief, a reduction in what people owe, at least for the month of April. So as you move forward over the next few days, please financially figure out what that would mean for us if we either waived half or waived all of utility bills for the month of April.
You said water bill or utility bill you're talking about?
Whatever combination staff wants to come up with. I'm not going to pick hairs. You know, maybe have one presentation for utility, one presentation for, you know, just the water. But you follow where I'm coming from.
No, I understand. But imagine, and I received an email and they sent to me about what I got and I've done to cut the water bill in half. Understand that it's not a lot of money when you're talking about water bill. And secondly, the city of North Miami been doing that for over 6 years. That's been sometimes when people see another city done something, it's like, oh, the other city is doing it. Why not North Miami? We've been doing that because we subsidize the water and the sanitation. And right. We see the resident about $1.7 million. That's when we need to understand, like that discount. We see that the city of North Miami been doing that for the past 6 years. We still understand the situation and we're gonna work together to do something, but it's not like something we haven't do for our resident. Councilwoman,
and I believe we can do more. Yes. Whatever we're doing now is here. Yeah. What we can do later is here, and that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, Councilwoman, I can't hear you. You're on mute. I can't hear you. Maybe you need to check. Put the volume up. Maybe you lower the volume. I can't hear you. Yeah. You did something. Go ahead. What? I can't hear you.
Well, IT's working on it now, sir. if you want to move to Councilwoman Keys.
Councilwoman Keys, do you have any comments and things to say?
At first, you were speaking on the water. I would like to steer reducing the water bill, because that will come out of the water enterprise fund, which I believe is a little bit more solvent. The utility bill, we are already funding that. We're subsidizing that by $1.5 million, which comes from general fund. So I'd rather see tweaks or forgiveness out of the water, personally.
Yeah, and we know that it's not the same regulation between and the general fund and the enterprise fund. We have some federal and state guideline when it comes to the enterprise fund that we have to look for it, and we understand that. Councilwoman, and I guess make.
Mr. Mayor, may I, as we wait for,
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Galvin.
Sure. I understand the cities need to be financially solvent, but this is a humanitarian crisis. I don't want us to be so focused on the bottom line that we overlook the needs of our community. We were not elected to be CPAs. We were elected to be leaders. And I hope as we move forward, we're going to understand that we need to do things that help our community, even if it comes at somewhat of a cost to our bottom line.
Okay. Are you, Madame Estimé, are you on? Maria Venot? And can you text
Mary, maybe you could do a chat and we could read it.
If you check. Can you unmute your phone? Because
Might be feedback, but we can try.
what about your phone?
We're calling her now to put her on
And then we
speaker.
can listening to the city attorney, and then to see if
Jeff, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to answer Councilman Galvin's question, because it's been brought up a couple of times, and I just want to place everybody in the right frame of mind. The last, before we left, before we actually put everyone on this new footing, I sent a memo out to everyone explaining how the emergency management process works, because I thought this might come up, that this would be an extended scenario where we're in this emergency posture. And just so you understand, the way the code reads, and I understand this is something new, we've never dealt with this before, because normally it's a hurricane and then we come back. But the way the code reads is, when we've declared an emergency, the manager takes on the day-to-day operations of the city and can do things like procurement that he normally would not be able to do under normal circumstances. So he can procure things over $25,000, for example. That goes on through the entire emergency period. And then at the close of the emergency, you as a council or the manager can declare the emergency over. And then we go back to normal, where the council meets and the council makes decisions. I've heard a couple of times where we said we're going to have these meetings and you all are going to vote on items such as, I'm guessing, procurement items. The code doesn't really have that. It doesn't contemplate you being able to do that during an emergency. One of the things that I mentioned to the manager, we will have to do a meeting on, because one of the powers that the manager does not have, even during an emergency, is to approve development. So to the extent that we have things coming out of CP&D that need to be approved, that can only be approved by you all. And based on what the governor has done, allowing us to have these virtual meetings, you would be able to have those meetings and vote on development items in a way that you normally would not have been able to do if the governor hadn't taken the steps that he's taken. So I just want to make everyone aware of that, because if we switch the posture from being an emergency to go into a regular situation, there are ramifications for that. For example, we're counting on getting money.
This city has to lead and act. We can't just defer everything because we're in a state of emergency. I'm all for voting to end this state of emergency if that's what it takes for us to be able to address the needs of our constituents. Every other city is doing this. The county's doing it as we speak, but for some reason, North Miami isn't able to do anything that requires voter action.
And let me say,
that's not an acceptable response.
Let me say some. Can I say? Let me say something. Understand that. I understand, Jeff. We won't be able to vote on procurement, but we can vote on resolution to direct the city manager. This is what the council wants, so that he can make decision.
You can.
I got.
Again, I'm just trying to, here's what I'm trying to prevent. What I'm trying to prevent is putting ourselves in a situation where when this is all over, for example, one of the things that Councilman Galvin just said, if you come out of an emergency, you don't get refunded. I mean, part of the reason we get refunds from the federal government, reimbursements from the federal government, is because we're during an emergency. So we can't act as if we're not in an emergency and then expect to get funds because we were in an emergency. So that's one of the things.
Yeah, why is every other city taking action and we're not?
So one thing, sir, is you have to be clear. We're in an emergency posture right now. We are one of the cities that have an emergency. Sir, can I finish? I got to be able to finish my sentence. So cities have different structures. They have different structures and emergency structures. So all I can tell you is what our code says. One of the difficulties that's been happening is, I've had conversations with other city attorneys, is other cities are taking actions because their codes allow them to take actions. And then I'm being asked, well, why aren't we able to do that? Well, we're not able to do that because our code doesn't allow us to do that. For example, City of Miami is a strong mayor form of government. They have a different structure. The mayor can do different things that our mayor can't do because our code doesn't allow it. So again, I understand the issue, and I'm trying to make sure that you all get to do exactly what you all want to do. What I'm just trying to make sure is we protect the city so that when this is all over, one, we get our refunds and reimbursements because we're in an emergency, and two, we don't get sued, because I'm telling you right now, there are lawyers that are lining up right now, getting ready to sue cities for whatever that we've done during this period of time.
And let them sue us. Honest to God, Jeff, this is such a bad answer. Our city needs to take action. We can't just say, look, this could last for 6 months. Are we not, as a council, going to meet and vote on items for 6 months? We have no idea when this ends. I don't think anybody is going to come back at us and say, oh, well, you removed your emergency and you did. That's a wonky policy thing.
I think another thing that we need to understand, and whether or not the city emergency is lifted, we're still under the emergency by the order of the county and the state and the federal government. That's mean right now, if the city of North Miami state of emergency is lifted, we're still abiding by the county one, and we still need to be in compliance with the county. But Jeff, what we are talking about, we're not talking about procurement and vote on. We're talking about item that any council member can add to the agenda and we vote on. That's what we are talking about.
Okay. Again, I'm just pointing out what the law says, and again,
can we do that?
We'll work with you on however you all want to do it. I'm hopefully right now, the way what you're trying to do right now, the way it's working right now, should be you all are telling the manager exactly how what you want, and he's implementing that, because that's the way it works right now. If we need to change that, again, because I understand it's going to be
do that at a council forum. We would like to do that at a council forum, not just each person asking the city manager to do something.
We'll work on something, sir. I understand it's an extended period of time, and this isn't normal like we normally dealt with, but I'm just telling you what
about other things.
Right.
We're talking about things related to the emergency, to address the need of the residents during the crisis. That's when, let's see, we decided to direct the city manager to implement a project or something related to the emergency. We're not talking about procurement.
No, I understand, Mayor. So part of the way this meeting even got organized was because we understood that there needed to be a forum for the council to get together and give guidance and to provide the community with information. And so so again, this is what we figured out. We said, you know what, we can still have emergency meetings and we can do this virtually. And so we've done this. So again, I'm not meaning to suggest that I'm telling you guys you can't meet at all and we can't do anything, we can't talk. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we, like we've done here, we've done made a creative way to get you what you want to do. I just need to figure out, based on what you're telling me, the input, get your input to come up with a way to legally do exactly what you all want to do. That's all I'm saying.
Jeff, and here's the problem. May I, Mr. Mayor? If we just continue to meet like this, all of us can individually give direction to the manager on what we'd like to see. But each individual council person doesn't get to speak for the whole city. We have to vote. So if we want to say to the city manager, freeze all water bills for 6 months, that has to be something that the council votes on, which means we have to have a real meeting with real public input. We can't just say, well, it's the consensus of the council. How the hell do we know what the consensus of the council is if we don't actually weigh in and vote? So, you know, in all honesty, and I'm sorry, Mary, in all honesty, we have to be a whole lot more proactive than we're doing right now. This is a nice information session. It's not an action session.
Thank you very much. And Councilwoman Estime.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So just so that I'm understanding, Mr. City Attorney, I guess you can hear me.
Yeah. I can hear you.
As it stands right now, we cannot vote on procurement items. Is that correct?
Under your emergency management code, once we've declared an emergency, all procurement decisions are made by the manager.
Okay. What makes you uncomfortable about us meeting? What is the concern, so that I guess
because once an emergency is declared, there's nothing in the code that allows you to meet. So the normal functions of the city, where you would normally go to meetings and have meetings and vote on procurement and vote on other things and give guidance to the manager in a normal council meeting, that doesn't happen anymore during the emergency. And again, part of the problem we have here is this is something we've never faced before. So I think when the code was written, it was written for, you know, what we normally deal with, which is like an hurricane. So we have the hurricane, we contemplate that maybe 2 or 3 weeks we're not able to meet, and then we come back at the next regularly scheduled meeting. The problem is we have this new emergency that our code doesn't really deal with. And so that's what we're trying to
But the world is going through that, Jeff. And like I mentioned to you privately, and I'll say it in front of my colleagues, I find it important. Not to say that, I mean, we can obviously, if I'm understanding the charter correctly, the city manager, the interim city manager can do what he wants. But at least I would want, as an elected official, to at least put on record to say I'm opposed or for an expenditure or not, and still hear have an input from the public. I don't see how us having a session similar to this impedes him from acting. I mean, obviously, so I'm trying to really understand.
So the reason, again, the reason we're having this meeting exactly because of the things that you're saying. We understand that you all have to meet, you all have to have a way to give them the manager guidance, and this is going to be a prolonged period of time. So we are trying to do that. I mean, I'm not trying to suggest that we're not going to let you meet and you're never going to meet again.
We can't. Look, there's 4 people on this call right now. If 2 people want to do one thing and 2 people want to do another, what guidance is the manager taking? He can't be guided with just a verbal nod.
Well, he can be guided by what the majority has told him.
How do you know the majority is telling you if you don't vote?
Because he's talking to 3 of you. If 3 of you tell him the same thing, that he knows that the majority have told him.
3 of us tell us to do something, that's a vote, and the public should be able to weigh in and discuss.
Okay,
right,
I think we understand.
I can only tell you what the code says.
Again, you have an idea of exactly what
This is a humanitarian crisis on a global scale. telling us what the code says is not good enough. If
Okay,
for next Tuesday to help the emergency, and let us just have at it if that's what we need to do.
No, but I understand that since we are under the state of emergency, and we're gonna address the emergency at a public forum, and we're gonna direct the city manager what to do on an emergency scale. I don't think there's any problem with that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that means we need to vote.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about vote. No, I understand that. We're gonna vote on any emergency item that any council member wanna vote on. I think we should be able to do that. We're not gonna go on the procurement process. We can put that on hold until we go back to normal business. But as of right now, if there is something that we think and that need to be addressed when it comes to the emergency, I think we should be able to put it on the agenda and vote on it. I don't see a problem with that.
But if I'm understanding the city attorney correctly, he's advising against that. He's saying we can't vote.
No, but what he said, he's talking about procurement. I'm talking about.
I'm talking about everything, not procurement.
So here's my suggestion. Here's my suggestion, if you guys would allow me, please. Mr. Attorney, you obviously hear our plea, and you obviously see where we're headed with that. I would suggest that, that we talk to the governor or do something can be changed to allow this, because how long is this going to last? We may have to, and here's the concern. We have an attorney advising us saying that, and I understand what my colleagues want to do. I want to do that as well. I've had this private conversation with our attorney on saying, hey, we need to meet, and if we have to take actions, we may need to take some action. However, we also need to legally protect ourselves. So in the meantime, are there any actions that we're really wanting to take right this second now? No. So let's give him an opportunity to go and I don't know. I think he mentioned to me that he had a talk with several city attorneys throughout the county. Let's give him that opportunity. I'm asking our attorney to go take it at a higher level. Can laws be changed to allow us to vote? Let's do it legally to protect ourselves. But the concern is we don't want to have to wait until 6 months later that we can't vote and we can't decide. That's the whole point. So
but we need to understand at the same time too, we're not just binded by the city's emergency order. We're binded by the county, by the state, and by the federal government order too. That's when it's not just what the city wants. I'm talking about in terms of declaring a state of emergency. That's when, let's say we lift our state of emergency, we're still under the state of emergency because the mayor of the county order North Miami, we're supposed to be in compliance with that and everything. And I think the city attorney understands exactly where we're at and what we would like to see. And we should be able to vote on emergency items that address the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. I think that's where we are. And yes, Carol.
Okay, I think we do need to vote on this. I don't know that the meeting is appropriate because it's not really noticed to our residents. I would like to find out, can we just vote? Because are we also, if we're going to vote on this, do we have to have public input, public hearing after we vote?
Yes. So, any item that we're going to vote on, we have to have public comment.
So if we spoke to the manager and attorney and gave our directives, what we would like to do,
public forum.
Maybe we could get at least the next meeting, whether it's in a week from now, put it online that we're going to be having a discussion and possibly take action on a plan to help the residents. And I mean, we're not just voting on a water bill. There's other items I'd like to see. There's other ways I'd like to help the residents. And as Mr. Williams said, we also want to see what's going to happen with the next relief with FEMA before we do that. So I think we should put together a little package as quickly as possible, notice it, see how we can get the residents' input, and then take a vote on it. I personally don't think there's anything you can actually vote on.
Any single item we're gonna vote on need to have the input of the residents, meaning we have to have public comment. We have to open it to the public to hear the comments so we can vote on it. The only reason we don't have that now is because it's discussion.
So Councilman Dalvin gave his thoughts on the water utility. I said water. I mean, I also would like some input, and I don't know if this is the time or later, on the feeding. I, would like to see food distributions. I want to help the seniors and disabled, and I'm just going to throw it out. We need to, as long as we're buying this stuff, we need to get more packages that are consumer friendly to individuals and seniors. The food distribution was fabulous for families, but for individual 80-year-olds, not much they could do with a bag of beans and a 3-pound bag of bulgur beans.
Understand
So
that
these
when
things
you're doing
I would like to
something,
see these are things I'd like to
Go ahead,
purchase for our seniors.
No, I understand that. Understand when it's very tough to, on a packet, to address the need of everybody. But what we need to do, and we need to address hot meal for those people in need. That's mean for those seniors.
It's not, excuse me, not just hot meals, but we have to address people who can't just use big bulk. It's a no-brainer. The Senior Citizens Foundation does it. We give little boxes of milk, little packages of the packaged fruit, the applesauce, the cereals, just things that a senior, an individual who's living alone, and we have plenty of people in our city, can just take it and make it, and it's not a big deal.
No, I agree with you.
Going forward, I want to make sure we purchase items like that for for people who need that, not.
But what we would like to do, what's better to do, Carol, instead of in the package, put food for everybody, and at the end of the day, some residents gonna throw some in the garbage, and some other residents gonna use another part. It's better to do home delivery food distribution to those seniors based on their need, based on the food we think that they will eat, instead of just put everything in the package, and then some residents gonna put that in like an applesauce. A lot of people gonna like it, but some other people may throw it in the garbage. In order to address that, we're gonna do the dry. Go ahead.
Being able to cook these dry goods, we need already prepared food. Hot meal is another whole story. We've talked about KC Healthy Cooking was going to be delivering and getting into the city. The city doesn't have capability because you have a refrigeration and you've got sanitation. So we can't just, first of all, you have to find someone to prepare the hot meals. They've got to be delivered right away. You can't keep them out of the spoilage. So that's why things in packages, things that are ready to eat off the shelf, cans of beans, cans of pork and beans, or vegetarian beans, just little packages that people can just grab and eat and not have to prepare for hours. That's all I'm saying. That's my recommendation.
That's good. And I think the social service and the manager have to take notes. And that's when we have to put different packages together based on items on the package. We can we can know exactly where to send those packages. And
you can have family packages, you can have senior packages.
Yes.
Or single family packages. I mean, there are a lot of ways. That's just what I want to go forward. We need to be able to do that.
We're about to wrap up the meeting, and do we have any comments from council members before we adjourn? Scott?
I think, do we have any public comments that were submitted before this?
Yes, we do.
Oh, go ahead.
Bob Pashan, 13005 Coronado Terrace. The United States is suffering through a worldwide medical and economic crisis. Florida and South Florida in particular are feeling the pain more than many. The federal government is spending in excess of $2 trillion to provide some relief. Many will say that this is not enough and more is required. I have heard some elected officials say that North Miami should dip into reserves and other funds to provide World War II and FDR style New Deal programs to assist during the crisis. Maybe that is a good idea, maybe not. The North Miami government has severely overspent its budget every year for the last several, and fiscal responsibility needs to be examined in all we do. We have shown a propensity to spend money wildly and have very little governance over the budget or to have any meaningful accountability over the expenses. For example, we are still waiting for an accounting of the Red Garden debacle from Super Bowl weekend. Before we start distributing quote unquote New Deal money, questions must be answered. Where does the money come from? How much is in those funds? What is their purpose? How much do we propose to spend, and specifically on what? Who receives the money, and how many outside, quote unquote, outside consultants do we pay to assist our efforts? Who oversees the expenses? Hopefully none of those charged with Red Garden management. What happens when the budget amount is exhausted? These questions would be asked and answered by every legitimate corporation or nonprofit organization under these circumstances. This is not to deny the need to provide any support nor to cast any accusations. This is about transparency in government. This is not the time for speeches and photo ops. It is a time for leadership. Thank you.
What else do you have?
That was the only one we received?
No, that's not all we received. I need to get the timer up.
Okay, what do we?
Just give me a second.
Okay. Do you have any other comments?
Oh.
From
I just
council?
want to say that. May I start?
Yes.
Okay. Veronica Guzman, 540 Northwest 127th Street. I just wanted to say that I commend the city for keeping residents informed with the emails regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. I appreciate the tips and suggestions on how to prevent and contain the spread of this disease. I am pleased to see the city's seriousness and response when it comes to these matters. I hope this puts into perspective the needs of the city on a grander scale to protect and provide for its residents. I appreciate the food drives and again, the communication. There are residents, unfortunately, who have not taken this matter quite as seriously. I pray for the safety of all of those who are on the front lines. The police department, healthcare workers, such as myself, grocery store employees, and all other essential businesses and employees. Please let's each do our part to adhere to the Safer at Home order so that this can finally come to an end. Thank you. Karen De Leon, 1935 South Hibiscus Drive. Dear Mayor and Council, I thank you and all city staff for the support being given to residents. I read Councilman Galvin's suggestions about tapping into contingency funds. Prior to such a move, may I request a review of the budget, find money that is not going to be spent this fiscal year, i.e. 4th of July celebration, and use that for supporting residents with continued food distribution. See the impact of the federal government's funding is going to have. Do not cut off water service. Waive all late fees. Wait to make any other decision about unpaid balances. Gardens are lovely, but no, this is not planting season. We must wait until September, October. 2, most folks do not know how to raise produce and need education and leadership. 3, we had 3 community gardens just a few years ago. Last I heard, 1 remained and the others had been dismantled. Our contingency fund is needed to support city services in case of a disaster. We have hurricane season around the corner. We need to know that the city has the reserves needed if North Miami was flattened by a Category 5 hurricane. When and if city funds are used to help individual residents, a system needs to be thoroughly vetted before enrolling it. 2, an oversight committee must be in place in which no one on the committee has any relationship with anyone on council or on staff. No one was capitalized. Any funds given out to homeowners could become a lien against the property. Awareness that what is given to a landlord, parentheses, i.e. waive the water bill, does not necessarily get to tenant. If we have a glimmer of an idea of how hard hit our city's revenues will be last year, we must be frugal and thoughtful. In all due respect, no one, open parentheses, that I know of, close parentheses, on council or in city hall is an economist. We cannot lead with our hearts. We must help one another in a well thought out manner, protecting both our individual physical health and our city's overall fiscal well-being now and into the future.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond to that?
There's two more. I have more.
When am I allowed to respond to that?
It'll come again.
We don't have on this agenda council reports or anything like that, so I'm just, I really feel passionately the need to respond to that. Is anybody still there?
I mean, the mayor is the chair of the meeting, so I'm going to read the reports. I know that there's another comment that says the exact same thing, so.
Yeah, so may I, Mr. Mayor, may I 30 seconds respond? We talk about needing these contingency funds for an emergency. This is an emergency. I'm not sure why that isn't setting in with a good swath of our community. Yes, we need to have plans. Yes, we need to be smart about it, but this is far more urgent than clearing away some tree branches that fell in the street. People are not eating. People have lost their jobs. If you say we need contingency funds for an emergency, this is it.
Thank you. And does anyone want to add anything?
Nope. Agreed.
Madam Clerk?
Thank
Do you
you.
have any more?
Yes, I have more. I have two, excuse me, Chena Lucian, 12880 Griffin Boulevard. I have two questions. This is for the 2 p.m. upcoming, I guess, question and answer today. My first question is, how will the city be handling the water and trash bill? They're usually very high. I can't imagine that people are going to be able to afford those. Additionally, is there any thought to upcoming taxes? Like, I know that this is going to be lifted before that, but taxes are thousands of dollars, and I just can't imagine that people are going to be on their feet this year. And what are the thoughts about the upcoming property tax? Niall McCulley, 2640 Northeast 135th Street, number 404, North Miami, Florida 33181. Hi, Scott and fellow council members. I have just spent an hour trying to verify my request for unemployment benefit. My claim is in and I have a single day left to parentheses request benefits. Before that, cancel them. I've been doing this dance of trying to claim on the request your benefits page every day now for weeks. Just so you know, the experience as of today, let me tell you, the system is still completely broken in every single aspect. Website doesn't work, and in any case, still ask for all of the details that are supposedly quote unquote waived, which makes it impossible to request benefits. But even if you were to have such details, it crashes every single time you try and enter a single line. Emails to them get no response, call system cannot arrange callback, and there's no queue to join. If you wait for a representative, you get cut off after about 30 seconds. Totally broken. What the heck are people supposed to do? I'm down to my last 100. Justin Susie, 13080 Coronado Drive, North Miami, Florida 33181. Please do not open up the bank of our contingency funds. Both the federal and state governments have offered a significant amount of financial help and relief for small businesses and individuals. Every resident of North Miami should take advantage of them. In addition, they are talking about another stimulus package coming. I think we should wait and not access our contingency funds, especially with hurricane season coming. Claudia Pazmino, 13504 Northeast 23rd Place. 1. Is there somewhere the city can have residents go and pick up employment applications, maybe help with filling them out also? 2. I propose that the city have the Hispanic Heritage Committee put together a Adios Coronavirus celebration party when this is finally all over. 3. Thanks to the entire city employees, they are doing. Be safe. Sandy Marks, 1940 South Hibiscus Drive. Dear Mayor and Council, I thank you and all city staff for the support being given to residents. I read Councilman Galvin's suggestions about tapping into contingency funds. Prior to such a move, may I request a review of the budget, find money that is not going to be spent this fiscal year. Open parentheses, i.e. 4th of July celebration, close parentheses, and use that for supporting residents with continued food distribution. See the impact of the federal government's funding is going to have. Do not cut off water service, waive all late fees, wait to make any other decision about unpaid balance. Gardens are lovely, but no, this is not planting season. We must wait until September, October. I have always planted a bunch of garden, but it began but began it in October as the rest of the year is too hot to have a successful garden. Most folks do not know how to raise produce and need education and leadership. We have 3 community gardens just a few years ago. Last I heard, 1 remained and the others had been dismantled.
It's red already.
Our contingency, no, I did not. Our contingency fund is needed to support city services in case of a disaster. We have hurricane season around the corner. We need to know that the city has the reserves needed if North Miami was flattened by a Category 5 hurricane. When and if city funds are used to help individual residents, 1, a system needs to be thoroughly vetted before unrolling it. 2, an oversight committee must in place which no one on the committee has any relationship with anyone on council or on staff. 3, any funds given out to homeowners could become a property. 4, awareness that what is given to a landlord, open parentheses, i.e. waive the water bill, close parentheses, does not necessarily get to the tenant. We have only a glimmer of an idea of how hard hit our city's revenues will be last year. We must be frugal and thoughtful. In all due respect, no one, open parentheses, that I know of, close parentheses, on council or in city hall is an economist. We cannot lead with our hearts. We must help one another in a well thought out manner, protecting both our individual physical health and our city's overall fiscal well-being now and into the future. Sincerely, Sandra Marks, KBHA Treasurer.
Thank you very much. It's 4:30. I think, how many of you are left? What's that?
That's it. That was the last one.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Estime, you said you want to?
Oh, so when I was trying to speak earlier, I was just kind of diddling with, in terms of the utility bills to see what we can do for a constituent. I understand what you said, Mr. Mayor, about that we have been subsidizing, which is indeed true, but just, I guess, for the duration of the time, whatever time frame it is, that we could dramatically reduce our residents' utility bill. Also, I'd like to, Councilwoman Keys mentioned KC Healthy Cooking. I'd like to publicly thank them for the services that they have.
Mm-hmm. And I think she left.
Well, it seems like she's frozen, Mayor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, KC Cooking, for the past 2 weeks, I've been helping the city in offering about anywhere between
sitting anywhere, but encouraging you, when if you're tired of cooking at home, to use to help our small businesses, because they're going to. I'm saying, and again, I'm sorry. Am I still talking?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Councilwoman Mary Irvin. Go ahead. She's not listening.
It seems that she's offline, according to what we have. I'm not sure.
And now, do we have any comments, anything before we adjourn? Scott, no? Councilwoman Keys?
No, just everybody stay safe, stay at home, please.
Councilwoman Estime, are you there? Madam Clerk, I can't hear you, Mary. You're on mute. I see red.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't even know what I was saying anymore, but basically, just encouraging everyone to just be safer at home. And I guess that's all I'm going to say before I get interrupted again. You were saying something, Mr. Mayor? I'm not sure, because I thought I heard you talking, but I was unable to hear.
No, I couldn't hear you. That's why we were.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay.
I just want to remind folks how important it is to stay home. I think it goes without saying that a lot of us have been touched by this tragedy, this pandemic personally, and it has led to significant tragedies. And so in honor of those lives that we have lost, in honor of those folks who have underlying health issues, in honor of those folks who have who are differently abled and may not be able to take care of themselves, I think we have to take care of them by staying at home. In addition to that, we, again, the city clerk's office is going to be assisting with reemployment applications. And once that system is set up, we will surely advise the North Miami community through the regular channels. And so if you are not already to subscribe to the North Miami newsletter, please feel free to subscribe to them so that you are able to get that alert. The city clerk's office phone number is 305-895-9817. Again, 305-895-9817. Thank you. And wash your hands.
Thank you very much, City Manager or Deputy City Manager.
Nothing new. I just would, while we're all on the phone, so is it a consensus that you guys, work with you guys to put together a form of an agenda for next week,
Yes.
for a meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
An emergency packet. And the only thing I want to say is for everyone to understand that the country is under a state of emergency. So do the city of North Miami. That's when we do understand some people will never be impacted by anything. But when you see the news, over 10 million people will file for unemployment. And you already know the city of North Miami and where we are. That's mean, please understand that we're under a state of emergency, and this is our responsibility to do what we can to help our residents. If we don't have any other comments, anything, we're gonna adjourn. Thank you, everyone, and be safe.
We are adjourned as of 4:36 p.m.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Ricardo, please end it.